So I'm very new to meditation and I have just begun daily practice. I'm also very sensitive to sound and being an improbable musician. So my ears are very naturally drawn to any sonic flows or events while meditating. I appreciate sound's presence and not judgmental or trying to classify this kind of as sonic events as good or bad. The meditation process becomes a process of switching attention between sound and the breathing, and also feeling one's own body pauses. So what is the best approach and method to meditate in these cases? Do I ignore sound and focus on breathing? And thank you. I think this is the question I think Lucia raised last time. We're not sure about it because this is quite, it's very special. So we kind of recommend her to raise the question to you. Lucia, is there anything else you want to add?
No. Okay. So what kind of musician are you?
Noise music. It's like doing more improvisation recently.
Okay, so it's kind of not a typical kind of instrument based, but more improvisational.
Yeah, electronic and improvisation.
Improvising the sound from natural environment?
Improvising sound from, I don't want to go into technical, but the non-input feedback from the electronic equipment. So it's the sound like generates, not being inputted inside the equipment itself, like samples and stuff. It's the sound of the equipment.
Interesting. Kind of like abstract.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I appreciate field recordings. That's where I started. So listen to the natural sounds. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because clearly you have a interest and training to pick up natural sounds. And as an artist, your mind is always tuning into the different possibilities to incorporate into your art. So that comes the judgment, that part of your question. It's a difficult one. It's difficult not because of method or practice, it's difficult because it's hard to resist. It's hard to resist the judgments and the tuning into the different kinds of sounds. It's your training. And it's not unlike traditional musical instrument. You're into the natural sound amplification before the instruments are plugged in, and the ambience and all that stuff. So you're always in tune with that. To tell you not to do that, it's like breaking your leg or something like that. So
can I share something?
Sure.
I noticed it this week when I doing the meditation, and then I don't know if there's anything helping, but when I you mentioned about like not trying to be judgment, that's what I'm kind of naturally do. I just take in the events and then not trying, and then I noticed there's a moment I remind myself, don't name the sound, just hear it and then let it go, or know it's there in existence. And then I find something quite interesting this week is when I'm sitting and I listen to the sound and try to switch in between my breathing and the sound. And then there's somehow suddenly become very acutely aware of my shape in this ambient sound, ambient world or environment. And then the sound is, it's like surround sound idea, like there's a sound there, there's sound there, there's sound there, there's sound there. I'm some sort of shape inside this world. Is that a good way to practice, or I'm not sure?
It's not either good or bad. It's just a natural experience.
Yeah.
I'm hesitating a little bit because I'm thinking if I teach you meditation on sound, there's no one there in London to guide you. So it's not like meditation on breath where some of the timekeepers can give you advice. They haven't practiced contemplation sound. So here I'm going to give us a suggestion to you. Don't resist the sound. Allow the sound to be present. But perhaps listen to it with a new interest. What is that? Listen to the silences between the sounds and the shifting tones of the sound. So silence it's almost like a bass line. It's always present. Right? And you see, the problem with sound is the mind discerns, or you can say discriminates between different sounds and shifts from here to there, there, to there, there. So it's always moving. So I want you to try to listen to the silences in the sound. And allow your breath to ride the waves of the sound and the silences. So your breath is, so there's not an opposition. Don't try to think of it as breath is my method, and then the sound I'm constantly being pushed and pulled into different directions. I'm supposed to be meditating on the breath. Don't do that. Just allow the breath to be present, merging with the sound. It's almost like the sound is not out there. The sound is here. It's the breath. So usually, the distracted mind, the scattered mind, goes out to the sound. So I want you to center the sound on the breath, on your breaths. So it's allow the sound to come in. This is the anchor. This is the sound. This is the baseline. This is the silence. Okay. So whatever sound that's happening around you, it is blended with your breath. So it's like a radio receiver. You're the radio receiver. You're not going out to the sound. The sound is coming to here. You're receiving the sound. So the mind and heart is open and receptive. So maintain that openness, in tune with the silence. Allow the breath, silence, and sound to merge. Kind of just ride that. So it's another way of using meditation on the breath. So if you have questions, other people will be able to guide you a little bit. So you're cultivating a non-oppositional mind. And you're cultivating a receptive mind that is concentrated and clear. If you don't do this, then there's a struggle between different sounds and the judgment will come out. Judgment is like this overlay of discrimination, narrative, stories, construct we lay over the sound. Then you already lost the sound. You're not truly listening to the sound. You're listening to your own judgments. Right? So that's not meditation anymore. So you want to be receptive, allow the sound to come in, ride the sound with your breath, just allow them to naturally merge. And when there's no sound, there's silence with the breath. So your mind will always be in the present moment. So the present moment, the sound or the silence, and the breath, these three are always together, always merging. Then you're meditating. And any judgments and notions, ruminations and narratives, that's also a sound, right? So listen to the silence from which those words come and to which those words return. Don't resist those either. They're also another sound, isn't it? You're hearing your own monologue, right? So that's a sound. Where does it come from? Silence. Allow it to return to silence, and from which another wandering thoughts come. From silence, that's the baseline on which it emerges. Ride it with your breath. Allow it to be there. Okay, so breath is the baseline, silence is the baseline. The mind is receptive, not opposing anything. Everything returns to silence, everything emerges from silence. And just enjoy it. Right? In the body, of course, the timekeepers will be able to guide. Always establish a good foundation. The body is relaxed, right? Grounded. So you feel your presence here. There's a concrete, felt experience of being here, right? Grounded to earth. Right? Allow the breath to gently ride. Yeah. Okay, want to try that? Yeah.
It sounds very hard, but I kind of understand what you are talking about. Yeah, I'll try it.
In description, through description, it sounds hard. Actually, for artists, very easy. The artistic mind is not like a rational, reasonable mind, like kind of intellectually, kind of everything has to be rationalized. For artists, it's all blended together. Very intuitive, this method. Unless you're very rational. Are you very rational?
I don't know.
Try it. Give it a try.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's a lot of creativity in this. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Next question.
Thank you, Guo Gu. Next question is an anonymous question. I don't know if the people raised question is here or not. The question is greed, hatred, and delusions cause suffering. I read somewhere that hatred is the most harmful to self and others. Can you speak about this?
Is the person here? Oh, maybe not. It's different with people.
Yeah.
So it's not like hatred is number one. For some people, yes. They have this natural inclination, a kind of agitation, aversion, accumulated through lived experience. So these experiences have shaped them into a particular way. When aversion is present, greed is also present. Craving, desire is also present. So when Buddha Dharma presents this model called the three poisons, greed, aversion, delusion, variously translated. This is just a model. Right? It's nothing like pure greed or something like pure hatred. Right? It's a prescriptive model. The descriptive reality of how we live our lives. There's always a mixture. When greed is there, aversion follows. When aversion, hatred, anger is there, craving, longing is present. So, what to do then? To come back to the body and to learn to relax the body, to deal with the body first, because at those moments we're usually top heavy, our energy is up here, and the stress hormones is already flushed down through the body, so that chemically your body is already saturated with cortisol, aggression, stress hormones. So you need to, body, breath, mind, these three tripod. So when the mind is has this very strong emotion, if you try to tell yourself some idea, I shouldn't do it, I should be happy, I should be compassionate, usually it doesn't help. So you have to come at it through the other two, the breath and the body. The body being perhaps takes up the largest portion of our being. You have to relax the body or do something about the body. And when the body is relaxed, then that will influence the breath. And then we'll have a better perspective of our emotions. Better perspective means we can actually see ourselves engaging in anger and have methods to do something about it. We can begin to actually tweak these feeling tone states. So I don't know if the person's here is satisfactory or not, but that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Guo Gu.
Yeah.
The last one question on the list is also an anonymous question. It's a little bit long. Let me read it out. So, dear Guo Gu Laoshi, for the past 2 years, I've been trying to heal myself from a very painful, broken heart experience. Even after practicing different methods of Buddhist meditation, mantra reciting, etc., I still cannot stop the narrative in the mind. And this really made me feel depressed. The thoughts is like, for example, if in the past I didn't do that silly action towards the other person or vice versa, or if me and the other person did not fight on a day, perhaps our relationship now would becomes not as bad as this, and so on. So those kind of thoughts keep coming over and over in my mind every single day. I feel that the more I try to let go of this person, the louder the narrative in the mind is. I feel and suffocated because my own thoughts, and I do not know how to deal with it. And please help. Thank you.
Sounds like a question for a therapist instead of a meditation teacher. But I'll say a few words. It's best to talk to the person instead of try to communicate with the person, instead of letting it build up inside, if that's possible. Of course, different people are at different places. They may not be ready to talk, even though we want to. So and the way we feel has a lot to do with our past. So different people respond to things uniquely. And our own unique response to things indicates the way that we've been shaped. So it's an opportunity to understand that aspect of ourselves. Don't try to oppose it. It's part of our history, part of our experience. So we embrace that. Deeply. As for, for example, feeling depressed, a lot of times people are locked into a loop of narratives. And it's very hard to change this loop because there's a whole history. The way our past experiences have shaped us a certain way. So there's a embodied history to this loop. So telling us to do things, to change, try to resist, try to avoid thinking about this other person, make it worse, will not work. So, the previous question I talked about body, breath, and mind. this is at the level where we can still do something about it. There's another dimension to body, breath, and mind, and that is the external environment. So if it's possible, because our bodies, breath, and mind are always under the influence of the external environment. So to change one's environment. When a person's very depressed and cannot get out of this loop, it's very hard for this person to get out of this loop of body, breath, and mind, which is cycled around this vortex of narratives, depression, and so on. So what you need to do is remove yourself from this environment, from your current environment, change an environment, go someplace, be with someone, engage with the outside world. Then slowly you can come back and kind of change how you feel inside. Right now, if a person is depressed, if a person is locked in this loop, even the external environment is sucked into this vortex. They will resist to change. They will resist to go out. They don't want to see friends. Everything, it's subsumed under this narrative, embodied grief and sadness. So it's very difficult. You have to go out, be with other practitioners, do something, and visit another place. So it takes, in other words, drastic change. Drastic change. That's one way. Another thing is just change one's environment. Instead of removing oneself out, like take a vacation, go someplace, stay with a friend for some time, get yourself out of this loop. If you can't do that, you change the environment yourself. Like you change your furniture around. You completely change your living room, your bedroom. You change all the decorations. Or you get your friend to help you change, because the person in that state probably don't want to change anything. So why is that? Because our sense of self is moment to moment constructed and influenced spatially. Just not this insular, greed, hatred, ignorance, me, I, mine thing, and my own history. It's actually spatially oriented. So when we're in a particular space, our sense of self changes. So that's why the Buddhist notion of self is not this Cartesian understanding of body versus mind, matter versus spirit. It's not like that. Buddhist notion of self is 6 sense organs, 6 sense faculty, coming in contact with the 6 sense objects, giving rise to 6 corresponding feelings and cognitive processes. So in other words, it's this psychosomatic, socially constructed. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind here. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought there. Giving rise to all kinds of experiences. So if you change the ingredient of this workings of causes and conditions, if you change drastically the whole external sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, is different, then your thought will be different. Your sense of self, relationship with the environment will change. And then you can begin to work on yourself. So first is to break up this vortex where everything is sucked into your work, your family, your friends, your world is sucked into your own narrative. Me, I, mine, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm that. You gotta take yourself out of that. Whether visit friends, live with someone, go on vacation, or hang out with friends, change the external environment, or change your environment in the house. Once you can take yourself temporarily out of that, so the self that's kind of so influenced by the environment, so the spatially constructed sense of self is altered or shifted, then that may present a respite temporarily for you to possibly have new perspectives on things outside of this vortex. Then you can work on yourself. Methods like loving kindness meditation. Does that make sense? That's why, when a person is depressed, sad, you have to get out of the house. That's why it works. Because our sense of self is not only body and mind, but it's spatially oriented too. And that's also why when we go to a parent's house, our sense of self is different because the external environment relate to you differently. Your parents still see you as a little boy, a little girl. They nag on you, they tell you what to do, So automatically we assume a particular pattern of when we're young, relating. Either fighting or defense mechanism automatically comes up. When we're in another space, a church, cathedral, high ceilings, spatially impacting our presence, which we feel differently. Okay? And we're in a park, when we're in nature, when we're in a small room of our own bedroom. Usually people think this is my feeling, my experience. Actually, it's not your feeling completely. It's not your thoughts completely. It's interdependently constructed. So the external environment actually changes a person. This is called Patita Samuppada, 缘起, or dependent origination. So sense faculty, sense object, corresponding feelings and emotions. So this is so in summary, somehow get yourself out of the vortex temporarily. So you allow new causes and conditions to come in, which gives you a temporary respite, temporary space of possible change and experience of things. And when the ingredients are changed, and you can possibly engage in. When you're on vacation or friends, or maybe do some loving kindness meditation. Whatever you do, get yourself out of the vortex first. Otherwise, this is all that we know, and this is all that we trust and believe, our own view of things, our own experience of things, which is not necessarily true. Then when we turn around and once you have some perspective, try to talk to the person. If you're in the vortex and you try to talk to the person, it's just your narrative against that person's narrative. That's the cause of the problem in the first place. So it's just apple and oranges. They're not really the same fruit. So it's not gonna go well. You're in a particular place. That person is in a particular place. You're in different places, spaces. So it's important to do what I said before. And talk to someone, maybe talk to a therapist, a friend you can confide in, objective, a wise friend. Otherwise, the friend will be hijacked by your vortex. You know what? You're right. She's a jerk. He's a jerk. You should blah, blah, blah. It's just sucked into your narrative. So you need a wise friend who can, Kalyana Mitra, 善知识, who can actually give you some perspective on things. I'm not a therapist, so. As for loving kindness meditation, once you kind of go through these processes, and by the way, it's not linear. It's like once I get myself on the vortex and I do this, then I'll be okay. It's reciprocal. It changes and cycles through, and you have to come at this again and again. And if you want to know more about loving kindness meditation for oneself, there are videos on YouTube and audio files. Not only by me, but there are a lot of Buddhist teachers. So find the person that you resonate with. Maybe, for women, maybe a woman's voice, a female teacher. I have a student who is a woman, a young lady. She has experienced a lot of trauma. She really loves Chan, and she loves my teachings. But she says, Guo Gu, I wish you were a woman. Why? Because every time she sees a man, because of her trauma, she can't help to have this defense coming up. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes like that. So I said, go talk to one of the timekeepers. I have a lot of assistant teachers who are women. Just practice with them. So, if you have, strong feelings, even when you come to the Dharma, choose the teacher that's helpful to you. To learn loving kindness to oneself. Then you'll discover that you're amazing. Each and every one of you, amazing, wonderful, full of potential, lovable. But when love resides here, then we lack nothing. We'll be able to see things from different perspectives. So it's important to love ourselves. And there are so many things to every person, really lovable, amazing. All the different quirks and our defense mechanism and even our vexations, kind of adorable. The way we, and our resilience, our strength inside. Really amazing human beings. So much to love. So when we have this love inside for ourselves, then things will work out, no matter what things that we encounter. It's the problem is sometimes people are at different places. Sometimes they're not good matches. Sometimes we ourselves are still using the same mechanism that we've learned as children, outdated. And we're still playing that out in our partners and our friends. So it's very, very difficult when that happens. It may not manifest the same. We're adults now, and we're very smart, very intelligent. But the fundamental approach to things is still outdated way that we have learned when we were children to get what we want, to relate to others. So all these external factors and self. All right. Is that okay?
Thank you. Wonderful.
Speaking in general terms only.
Right. I want to open a question to the floor. So if you like to ask a question related to your practice, you can raise your physical hands or you can raise your virtual hands. I think James is very good at raising virtual hands. So James.
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay, by the way. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Hello. So a practical question, if I may. I want to explore Huatou kind of methods. Could you maybe give a suggestion around a good Huatou to practice, if at all possible, please?
Okay, so Huatou is a method that usually a person practice under the guidance of a teacher. So do you have a teacher there who you're working with?
Not working with, other than obviously this kind of class that I come to kind of once a month or so. So I haven't got a teacher directly that I work with.
James been with this group probably for a good few years.
4 or 5 years?
Yeah,
about 5 years now.
But, he never came to a retreat, so probably Guo Gu don't recognize him.
You have to, James, you have to go to a retreat, right? Because Huatou, for those of you who don't know, how many of you do not know what Huatou is? Raise your hand. Everyone knows. Okay. So I'll start there. Huatou, because it's so confrontational to ourselves, it brings up and stirs up a lot of things inside. So usually a person practices that when they have a good, solid foundation in meditation and concentration, so that they have already passed through all the different waves of the mind. So if we use this analogy of surfing, most people, when they meditate, they're surfing on the surface of the ocean. They're learning how to surf. All the big wave, small wave, they're learning how to survive. Some people are just drowning. So you really have to learn not to become an expert, because the ultimate point is not to surf on the surface of the ocean. The ultimate point is actually scuba diving, dive into deep things. But because there's a lot of waves of the mind, one may still get caught up with surfing. One may still get caught up with the ups and downs and so on. So once a person can pass through that, meaning they start to dive, then they start to experience peace. How many of you have done diving before? Even swimming underwater, it's silent, right? Silent peace. But that silence is an unfamiliar territory. Now, if you're just diving for a minute or two, that's nothing. But if you start to dive in the ocean, all the creatures, the sea creatures, it's kind of scary, you know. So this composure has to be developed before you dive deep into the psyche of your mind, because you're facing your existential question of who you are, like, who am I? Right? You can come at it from multiple perspectives. Like, what is this? What is it? And when all distractions subside, what remains? What remains? These are heavy questions. So Huatou uses, it doesn't matter which Huatou, there are all kinds of Huatous, phrases, kind of critical phrases we call it. Tap into this existential question, this fundamental existential question, and frame it in a particular way, in the way of the particular gong'an, koan, in the way of the particular phraseology of the Huatou. So it's kind of bracketed in a certain way to kind of funnel our sense of wonder of not knowing. So it's not kind of open-ended, right? It's kind of fluid, open-ended, also could be vague. It's not like that, right? So it funnels it in a particular phraseology of a Huatou. It becomes personal. So it can bring up a lot of stuff because it's quite powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So I typically don't assign Huatou unless the person has done the 7-day retreat with me. Other teachers may do it differently. But for me, I need to practice with the person and I just see how the person practices. Getting to know the person will help the teacher to give the right Huatou to the student. That's efficacious. Yeah. Just being with the person, you know, and you come to know the person. And then sometimes a Huatou can emerge from that relationship in a more organic way. So I don't advise people to just, you know, don't have a steady teacher to do it, because sometimes things that come out can be very scary to come out. So what you can do is, for now, is to familiarize yourself with the koan tradition by reading. And my book, Passing Through the Gateless Barrier, It's not only intellectual knowledge. Yes, it's written in words, it's a book, but it brings the koan in the reality of our daily life. So you can actually gain some entryway to play with the koans. So once you're familiar with the different scenarios, 48 different scenarios of life situations, and I relate it to daily life, once you kind of play with the different koans, integrating your daily life, at least you have some entryway of different views and different ways of carrying yourself and the different questions that emerge from our life. So prepare yourself and then go on a retreat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's also a way, so that's one way. Another way is to practice silent illumination. You're familiar with this method? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you're practicing in a particular way. And in my book, Silent Illumination, the recent one, I talk about how to integrate this fundamental existential question into silent illumination practice. So in that sense, generally, briefly stated, it's not this sharply honed phrase, scenario, case like the Huatou and Gong'an. The kind of fundamental existential what is this open-ended, receptive, and embodied way of investigating or experiencing what is this moment. So usually people are up here. You have to learn how to embody silent illumination, the moment-to-moment embodied experiencing. And I elaborate this extensively in the book. Maybe there's a PDF floating somewhere, or maybe you can borrow it from your friend. Once you get this embodied experiencing, very clearly what emerges is, without verbally framing it, right, is this what remains. So here you are sitting, embodied, wakeful and clear, rooted to earth. So there's a felt presence of the body sitting. And that freshness, that openness, clearly leads to what is it? Except you're not framing it like a Huatou, like what is it, what is it, what is it, what is it, It's just this knowing and experiencing. And this freshness will morph into wonderment. That is a more grounded way and solidifies one's foundation. And in that, having that foundation, whatever arises just dissolves into this freshness, as opposed to being like people usually are just locked into their own vortex of, what is the discrimination, this and that, I don't like it. What am I doing? Is this method good for me? Maybe I should try another method. Just all this gunk, right? So if you have that foundation of silent illumination, no more gunk. You're not surfing the wave anymore. You're the ocean. And what remains there becomes readily apparent. So get the foundation down, make your practice solid, and then go on a retreat, and we can investigate together.
That's fantastic. Much appreciated, Guo Gu. Thank you.
Thank you, Guo Gu. I'm just conscious of time. It's already 4 o'clock UK time. And Guo Gu, are you okay for one more question?
Is there another question?
And I think Sally has one question. But for those who, if you need to leave, and feel free to log off. It's not rude or anything.
Sally. Oh, Sally from New York. Okay, Sally, what's up?
Hi.
Hey.
Hello there. Hello, everybody. I'm wondering, what do you do when you have a kind of crisis of confidence in your method? What do you do if you've been practicing, a method maybe, for like 5 years, Huatou, and you, in the last year, you just cannot do it, because it's to be the antithesis of you don't want to make use words, you don't want to do it, you just want to sit quietly, on the cushion and maybe just use the breath. What do
you just sit, enjoy.
Yeah, well, I am, but the problem is the enjoyment can lead to a type of dullness, or complacency, because it's very nice, just being relaxing and not dealing with all the things that everybody is dealing with in the last year. So
yeah, there's a social dimension to that. Like you mentioned, this past year, and then everyone's locked down. There's all kinds of stuff. It's okay. Dullness can happen. It doesn't matter what method you use. You don't even have to use a method. You can have dullness. So don't worry about it. You just make sure you're not dull. So the question, the Huatou, Gong'an, it's already here. If a person is practicing for some years, it's already present within you. You don't have to give a words to it. You don't have to phrase it in a particular way. Even when you sit in silent rumination, embodied experiencing, just being present to what is. Right? You don't worry about it. The Huatou is present. You have to trust in that. You've been drilling yourself with the Huatou for 5 years. You think you're going to forget it?
I've been beating myself. Well, at first I was beating myself with the Huatou, and now, because it exhausted me, now I don't need to do that anymore. I can just
allow it to be organic. It will come out. Sometimes one Huatou, one phrase, particular phrase, give rise to another one that's actually organic, that's actually have some substance to it. So, been doing it for 5 years, just allow yourself to settle. Allow this, it doesn't matter what the question, just what, to sink down into your psyche. And just sit. No words. Okay? Until you're ready, until naturally, one day, you're drinking.
That's a big cup.
What is it? Someone, my student gave it to me. See what it says?
Yeah.
It's all good. My student in Chicago sent it to me. Oh, wait a minute. This is, Chicago, I think. Yeah. Someday, when you forgot about your Huatou, and you're drinking water, and all of a sudden, what is it? What is this experiencing? Who's experiencing? Come out. Maybe, it doesn't matter what. It could be anything. So, number one, it's all good. Like the cup says, it's all good. Second, organic. It's okay to temporarily put aside. The Huatou is already in you. This the circumstances that we find ourselves for the past year and a half, that all of us have experienced, has made some impact in our practice and our lives. On the one hand, we're able to Zoom more. Sally, you're able to, join the student social and all these things, connect more. On the other hand, it has set in place this undercurrent feeling tone of angst. Angst. And it's we're exhausted. We're exhausted. We don't want to ask questions. We don't want to. It's okay. It's a temporary thing. Just see it for what it is, and go with what's natural. Okay, Sally?